Well, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see all the smiling faces, hear the buzz and the chatter, looking at students, parents, relatives, family, friends, and educators, administrators, and it's great to see standing room only. We're glad everyone is here tonight. And to join us while we're reconvening the May 8th, 2018 regularly scheduled board meeting of the Richland 2 School Board of Trustees, where we've just returned from executive session discussing student expulsion, student appeals, admission requests into the adult ed program, employment recommendations, releases, and in-district transfers. At this time, we're going to jump right into our agenda 3.1, which is our inspirational moment and Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Agostini.
Mr. Chair, it's a real treat for me tonight to introduce Miss Beth Elliott, the principal of Windsor Elementary. She's going to introduce us to the three little girls that inspire me once a month. I get to read with them, my little friends, Imani, Summer, and Peyton.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman Plank, fellow board members, Dr. Davis, and executive staff. I'm Beth Elliott, the very proud principal of Windsor Elementary, and for the inspirational moment this evening, I would like to introduce Windsor's reading coach, Mrs. Kim Crapful, who has three very special guests.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to share with you how Spring Valley Rotary partners with Windsor Elementary students and teachers through our Rotary Reader program. Each month, these dedicated volunteers connect with students over stories, books, and quality conversations. They encourage children to ask and answer questions while discovering new interests together. Volunteers like our very own Honorable Lindsay Agostini are committed to the long-term success of their students and are invested in the schools and district's community. These volunteers are lifelong learners who believe deeply in our students and the power of reading and relationships. At this time, we are very excited to introduce our three young ladies, Summer Johnson, Peyton Lott, and Imani Walls. They're going to share their love for literacy, share a few of their ideas about their bright futures, and to represent Mrs. Agostini's Special Reading Club.
Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own and you know what you know. And you are the person who decides where to go.
You'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet. You're too smart to go down any not so good streets. And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. It is more open there in the wide open air.
And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Kid, you'll move mountains, so be your name Buxbaum or Bixby or Bray or Mordecai, Alley, then Allen, O'Shea. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way.
And while these three young ladies have shared their early love for reading, we appreciate Ms. Agostini and our other volunteers who are helping our kiddos to make memories and connections. So as they grow up and have their own ideas, they will also be able to share with others. Thank you, Mrs. Agostini, for making a little idea become a big deal to these three young ladies. Thank you again to all of our Rotary readers and volunteers. And at this time, the girls would like to present to Mrs. Agostini one of our favorite books at Windsor Elementary about an idea to share with your board member friends. Thank you. At this time, would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beth and Kim, thank you so much for the presentation, the inspirational moment this evening. Well done. And to Ms. Agostini, thank you for your leadership and volunteer service over there at Windsor. Thank you. At this time, we'll continue on with our next item up, which is 4.1, approval of the current agenda. May I get a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the agenda for our May 8th, 2018 regular board meeting.
Motion's been made to approve the agenda for the regular board meeting today, May 8th. May I get a second? Second by Ms. Agostini. If no discussion, we'll vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Next up is item 6.1, special recognitions. Dr. Davis. Excuse me, 5.1, student focus. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you, Chairman Plank, members of the board. The student focus for the month of May will come from Pontiac Elementary School. We have presenting to us this evening Principal Katie Barber, and one very special student will share an update on the school's DARE program. Dr. Barber.
Hi, good evening, Chairman Plank, board members, Superintendent Davis, executive staff, and guests. Pontiac Elementary is delighted to highlight the DARE program for you. This program is best known for the Keeping It Real curriculum. It's a 10-week program to help today's youth, particularly fifth graders, become prepared to make safe and responsible choices. Topics over the 10 weeks include peer pressure, being a good citizen, taking risks with positive consequences, dealing with stress and bullying, as well as communication styles and showing empathy to others. You see, the program is not all about drugs and alcohol, which is oftentimes the public's perception of this program. And in reality, it is so much more than that. Here is a sneak peek at our recent DARE graduation that we held with our fifth graders.
Dr. Barber, don't worry, it doesn't count against your time.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our 2018 5th grade DARE graduation. I would also like to thank our guest speaker, Lieutenant Gunnar Rose, and our special visitors that we have
being here. Just real quick, I am Deputy Proctor of the SRO here at Pontiac. A little bit about the DARE program. The DARE Keeping It Real program helps today's youth become prepared to make safe and responsible choices throughout their day. DARE is a 10-week program.
Lieutenant Vernon Rhodes is a native of Easley, South Carolina. He began living here in Columbia after graduating from the University of South Carolina.
DARE graduates, first of all, I want to say congratulations to each and every one of you. You guys have made a big step in your lives today by completing the DARE program. First of all, parents, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your commitment to come out to support these children on this day. And by you coming out today, that shows them that you love them, and it also shows them that you want to spend time with them and support them in events such as this. I'm hoping that what you learned throughout these 10 weeks will be something that will stick with you. I hope it's something that will stick with you and something that you can apply throughout your daily lives. We want you to be that leader that you are today. Boys and girls, we want you to be like teachers. We want you to be like teachers and teach someone else. Teach them to be able to make decisions, the right decisions in life, to keep them strong and keep them healthy. You got to learn to stand for what you believe in. Remember, you have to be drug-free and make responsible decisions for yourselves, okay? Learn your DARE program. I want you to put it to use in your life, and I want you to continue to do positive things.
What we had to do was write an essay about your experience in DARE and just
Boys and girls, what would you do if you were given $1,440 every day and you had until midnight to spend it or lose it? Then every morning you get another $1,440 to spend again. We get that every single day. We get 1,440 minutes every single day to spend however we want to spend it. Whatever decision we make in those minutes, we can't change. We can't get those minutes back. But you get 1,440 minutes to spend again the next day. And we can make changes and make those decisions even better the next day. The DARE program's goal is to help prepare every one of you to make good decisions about your health and your safety. We want to encourage you to use your time wisely and be the leaders that I am proud of, that your teachers are proud of, and that your parents are proud of. We want you to help others and be model citizens. You, boys and girls, are the future.
Good evening. My name is Ryan McCallum, and I am a 5th grader at Pontiac Elementary School who recently participated in the DARE program with the SRO Deputy Proctor. Participating in the DARE classes helped me learn how to make safe and responsible choices, as well as to keep my body drug-free. I understand now that drugs aren't always bad if the doctor prescribes them. I also learned how to evaluate my decisions and be confident in myself. Thank you, members of the Richland 2 School Board, for supporting this partnership with the Richland County Sheriff's Department so my friends and I are able to experience DARE before we move on to middle school. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are any questions,
Thank you.
our SRO Deputy Proctor is also here with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Barber and Deputy Proctor. And any questions or comments from the board?
I did just
Ms.
thank you. Good
Ms.
job.
Mackey.
I appreciate it. Both of my children have gone through DARE, and I appreciate the effort and the emphasis of what it's designed to be. And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? I do wish we all have 1,440, many of those minutes left, many day after day. All right, now we'll move on to 6.1, which is our special recognitions. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, this evening, Ms. Libby Ruth will come to deliver our special recognitions. Ms. Ruth.
Thank you. So this board meeting and next board meeting, we'll have a parade of wonderful premier students achieving lots. And we're focusing on our students right now because, as we know, come June, we may not get them back here for a while. But we look forward to this time. We appreciate the board, Chairman Plank, Dr. Davis, giving us the time during the board meeting. And we're most appreciative of our families who are taking time out of very busy, busy lives right now to come here for recognition. So let's get started, and we're going to start with some very talented visual art students. We have an elementary high school team, kind of, sort of. We have from Catawba Trail, Evan Outlaw, and we'll ask him to come forward with his principal, Denise Barr. And then from Blythewood High School, Amaya Gallman, and if she'll come forward with our interim principal at Blythewood, Bobby Cunningham. Here they come. So these two students were winners of the 2017 National Conservation Poster Contest for South Carolina. Evan won in the kindergarten through first grade division. You see his artwork up there on the screen. Amaya won in the grades 7 through 9 division, which she entered last year when she was at Longleaf Middle, right? So their posters addressed the theme for the year, which was Healthy Souls Are Full of Life, and was designed to raise awareness about the importance of healthy souls and their uses. Evan learned about soil health through Catawba Trail's composting program, where they collect leftover fruit and vegetable scraps from the cafeteria in the compost wagon. Maya entered the contest, like I said, when she was in Longleaf Middle School's Zubot Magnet program, and she learned a lot about the importance of soil conservation throughout all 3 years of her time at Longleaf in that magnet program. From the state level, she went on to win an honorable mention in the national competition. So we congratulate these green students with great artistic talent. Congratulations. Next up, we have a group of middle school students who come here quite often because they continue to win the Quiz Whiz championship that we have for the district. So we'll start by asking their principal, Tamala Ashford, and coaches Mark Turner and Kathy Stinson is here as well to come forward. And then students, I'm going to call you up in alphabetical order, and I'm going to do my very, very best with your names. I have practiced. All right, so if you are here, come on forward in this order, please. Harsha Avila, Carson Acock, Stephanie Babinick, Alina Chatha, Parth Desai, Wesley Fletcher, Matthew Hitchcock, Zachary Wong, Pranav Pula, Steve Robinson, Jack Woory, and Joshua Yao. Now, let me go back and tell you about this amazing team of students. I got to flip back over, sorry. So for the third year in a row, and the fourth time overall, the Dent Diamonds won the Richland 2 Quiz Whiz Middle School Academic Tournament. Quiz Whiz is similar to the National Academic Quiz Tournament, and it's not a trivia game. The rigorous pyramid-style questions focus on academics and subjects including history, literature, science, fine arts, current events, and sports. Questions such as which decade did Franklin Roosevelt win a fourth term, and which planet is called a twin to Earth. And I will just say that in a decade of Google, when so many facts now we know we can Google that we don't teach, and the memorization of it, and the fact that y'all know this stuff offhand without a Google, there's no Google in front of you, is very impressive. Dent won the competition, finishing with 7 match wins and no losses. And the matches are airing on our R2 TV, which is now on channel 1303 on Spectrum Cable. Congratulations. And I'll move out of the way, Karen, so y'all can come take photos.
Okay, so everybody just keep smiling, all right? Big smiles. All right, here we go, guys. Ready? 1, 2, I'm gonna use the podium. 3. Nice, perfect. Great job.
Let's congratulate them one more time. You can get back to your seats now. Richland, too, had a wonderful showing at the recent conference held by the South Carolina Association of Student Councils. Last meeting, we learned about Dr. Suber's award there. But we have student councils who also did very well, and we're going to start with Blythewood High School. So if Bobby Cunningham would come back up, along with Student Activities Director Fletcher Spigner. And if these students are here, if they will join us up front. Andrew Busby. Andrew won first place for his freshman first recap video. Savannah Simpson was inducted into the Terry McCoy Student Council Hall of Fame, which is a special state award named after the longtime Richland Northeast Student Activities Director. And as student body leaders, Savannah and Avery Williams helped lead the Student Council to receiving the Gold Honor Council Award. The Honor Council was designed not to be a competition, but to set standards for councils to work toward being a planning tool for advisors and student leaders and a way to effectively recognize quality councils. So congratulations to our Blythewood group. We're going to get a photo of them. Oh, sorry. So sorry. Y'all just did not mean the back of the head. So get out of the way, Libby Ruth. Okay, thank y'all. Congratulations. Now we're going to have Richland Northeast High School to come forward. Start with Principal Dr. Sabrina Suber. We have Kennedy Perry, if Kennedy is here, who was elected District 4 Chair of the South Carolina Association of Student Councils, and Kamaya Johnson, who is the Student Body President. Now tell me which one is Kennedy? The Kennedy, thank you. All right, Kennedy won the state office for District 4 Chair. Kamaya Johnson is the Student Body President who, like our Blythewood colleagues, helped lead her student council to receiving the Gold Honor Council Award. And of course, last meeting we heard about Dr. Suber's award at this conference. So congratulations to you and your council members, and Megan to take a photo. Oh, yes. Seriously, I have no memory whatsoever. I'm so focused on the script. I need to write in the script. Move out of the way then I'll probably read it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I just want to mention, I don't believe our Ridgeview High School student could be with us tonight, but Victoria Jackson cannot be here, but she was inducted into the Terry McCoy Hall of Fame, and the school was named to honor council as well. And as we know, high schools are very busy right now, so we congratulate our student council members. Dr. Suber, would you mind coming back up here, please? I'm so sorry. I feel really bad with your boot on. Shelley tried to make me do it. I messed it up. I'm sorry. We have some Richland Northeast HOSA winners. And HOSA, for those who may not know, stands for Health Occupation Students of America. It's a national career and technical student organization which prepares students to enter the healthcare field. So if these award-winning students will come forward, Kayla Jeffers, Lauren Suber, and Janiyah Valentine. This talented trio won first place at the HOSA State Leadership Conference for a public service announcement they created about pre-diabetes, a topic that certainly is very important. The best thing, I think, for them is they get to travel to Dallas, Texas next month to compete in the international competition, correct? Well, we congratulate you and wish you all the best. Any parents?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm close.
Sorry, Mom.
You good.
Y'all got the pose down pat. I just want to mention that. Y'all look great up there. Thank y'all. Congratulations. Now we have a group from Spring Valley High School, so would Principal Jeff Timoni come forward along with Magnet Director Michelle Wyatt. And I'm going to call up Discovery students in just a second by alphabetical order. They won 19 first place awards at the South Carolina Junior Academy of Science written research paper and oral presentation competition held last month at Presbyterian College. Just saying that makes me tired. They won for written papers and oral presentations, and just about every category, I think, we won. And there were 59 total, and it comes along with prize money for Spring Valley in the total of $3,000. So let's bring up our award-winning researchers. We have Erin Bird, who won for her psychology and sociology paper. Casey Carter won for her consumer science oral presentation. Vamsi Gorapati for environmental science. Isak Chatoy for his microbiology written paper. Davik Karai for physiology and health oral presentation. Vikram Kumar for chemistry written paper. Abhijit Nair for his oral presentation in microbiology. Anika Nair, oral presentation in physics. Dawn Nguyen for written paper in physiology and health. Kushi Patel, botany for written paper and the oral presentation categories. Jillian Patton, biochemistry written paper. Pallavi Rao for zoology, both written paper and oral presentation. Bridget Ravindra for psychology and sociology paper. Elizabeth Scheidel, psychology and sociology oral presentation. Aaron Stark for the physics written paper. Christina Trifonova, oral presentation in environmental science. Shreya Varanasi, written paper in environmental science. And Alyssa Williams for written paper in engineering. That is an amazing group of researchers. If we want, we can take this group outside and do it on the steps, and then I won't be anywhere near in the way for the parents. They can take all the photos they want. That concludes tonight's special recs as well. So students, if y'all walk outside, Megan and I will get you on the stairs for a group photo. And thank you, board.
We'll give it a little time as everyone exits, and thank you to all the recipients and award winners. And Dr. Suba, we hope your foot heals. Heals fast. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item 7.1, the approval of the consent agenda. May I get a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Motion's been made by Dr. Hawkins Johnson to approve the consent agenda. May I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Shad. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Next up is 8.1, our first public participation of the evening. We have no one signed up. However, if you'd like to address the board now, please do so. Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to item 9.1, our legislative update. Dr. Davis, or excuse me, Ms. Mackey.
We'll hear from Dr. Miley at this time. Thank you, Mr. Plank.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The legislative update is, I actually decided to give it all a copy to all of you because it's fairly lengthy, but it's fairly complete. This is a legislative update that I'm a little biased, the school board officials, South Carolina Association of School Board Officials puts together. And we think it's a very good summary of what the House and the Senate has done. As you may know, they both are in conference committee right now. The conference committee has 3 senators and 3 House members. They met at 4 o'clock yesterday for 15 minutes and adjourned for the rest of the week and for the weekend and plan to get back together next week. So our budget is basically not on the discussion table this week, for the rest of this week by the conference committee, and hopefully they'll be addressing it next week. We still think that the tendency, they're leaning towards keeping the $60 base student cost increase and most of the other items that the Senate passed, the 1% increase in salaries for teachers and the step increase for teachers. I'll be glad to answer any other questions, but right now there's been no activity since the last time I was here, really. But I thought this would be a good summary for you to have as a reference in terms of what the House and Senate has done. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Miley. Any questions or comments from the board?
To add, I was going to announce that the last day of session is Thursday, but that's out the window now. So if anyone wants to call or write your legislators with regard to any concerns you have, you've got time to do that. Thank you, Dr. Miley.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Miley. Thank you, Ms. Mackey. All right, next up is item 10.1, employment recommendations. We didn't have any policy recommendations that we need to act upon, so we'll now move on to 10.2, which are student expulsions. May I get a motion? Mr. Manning.
I make the recommendations that students number 1, 3, 4, and 5, that we uphold the district's recommendation.
Motion's been made by Mr. Manning to students 1, 3, 4, and 5 to uphold the district's recommendation. May I get a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Mackey. Any further discussion? Okay. Before we vote, we'll make sure that motion comes up accurately. Okay. Motion is accurate, so at this point we'll vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Mr. Manning. Mr. Manning.
I make the recommendation that for student number 2, we uphold the district's recommendation.
Motion's been made by Mr. Manning to uphold the district's recommendation. May I get a second? Second by Mr. Shad. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Motion passes 6-1. Thank you very much. Okay, next up on our agenda is 10.3, student appeals. May I get a motion?
Mr. Chair, for student number 1, recommend deny the appeal. Student number 3, Blythewood Academy with the Rate Act. And student number 4, deny the appeal.
Motion's made by Mr. Manning to deny the appeal for student number 1, Blythewood Academy Rate Act for student number 2, and deny the appeal for student number 3. May I get a second?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I'd like to, you didn't quite repeat that back.
Did I not?
Correctly.
Okay.
Student number 1, deny the appeal. Student number 3, Blythewood Academy with Lorraine Ack. Student number 4, deny the appeal.
Forgive me, I was trying my best in my memory on that one.
I know where y'all came from. You didn't get to count to 4.
That's true. All right, motion's been made by Mr. Manning as he stated, and may I get a second? Second by Dr. Caution Parker. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I make the recommendation for student number 2, Blythewood Academy.
Yeah, I think I can get this one. Motion's been made for student number 2, Blythewood Academy. If I get a second. Second made by Mr. Shad. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Next up, item 11.1, old business action requested, approval policy revisions. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, we have before you this evening for approval the following policies: IHBA, Special Education Programs for Students with Disabilities, and JFABF, Students in Foster Care. Dr. Marshawn Franklin is prepared to answer any questions should there be any.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. This is up for action. May I get a motion to approve the items?
Move to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey to approve the policies as outlined. May I get a second? Second by Ms. Agostini. Any discussion?
Yes, yes.
Ms. Mackey.
Just want to tell you thank you for the revision in IHBA, the appropriate high-quality educational program verbiage. I appreciate that. Appropriately having curriculum, but still expecting the highest level of education for all students, regardless of their learning level. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Any other questions or comments or discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote on the motion that's before us. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 12, new business, no action requested. First up is 12.1, policy proposals. Dr. Davis.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Franklin will share with you the policy proposals for GCC, GDC, employee personal leave and absences. Dr. Franklin.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the administration presents to you policy GCC/GDC, employee personal leaves and absences. Please note that this revision does not come from the School Boards Association. It's from the district's administration. And to answer any questions about the proposed revision is Ms. Shawn Williams, our HR director.
Thank you, Dr. Franklin. Ms. Williams, how are you?
I'm well. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments from the board? Ms. Mackey.
Point of clarification, nothing specific, but the spirit of this policy is just give me the spirit of the policy, or why we felt that there was a need for the insertions.
Thank you for asking. The spirit of this is to make sure that we are providing high-quality services to all our schools and all positions, and therefore we are making sure that we have a person that's there that is qualified should a person exhaust their leave.
Just wanted to make that clear publicly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Any other questions, comments for discussion? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 12.2, report on policy KFB. Dr. Davis.
Dr. Franklin is prepared to share the report on the following policies, KFB and ARKFB.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. At the request of the board, I prepared a summary of policy KFB and its accompanying administrative rule, KFBR, and this is community use of district conference facility. And so in the policy, in the report, it summarizes the policy as well as the administrative rule.
Any question or comments from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Manning.
I like to, I want to back up. When we first created the center, I know there was some discussion about the serving of beer and wine in the facility. And when we did that, we said we would come back and review where we are. And my understanding is that the community overwhelmingly has, through requests for spirits in addition to beer and wine, spoken that that's something they would like to see here. So we're turning customers away because we don't have that available. So I would like to have us add spirits to beer and wine.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Any other question? Dr. Hawkins Johnson.
Yes, I have a comment, and I would like for us to have a discussion with that, a board discussion before we add that to policy. Again, R2I2 is a school building and it is a setting, and we don't allow alcohol in our other school buildings and facilities. So I'm just not on board with allowing alcohol into this building because it is a school site and a school building. So before we incorporate that into policy, I would love for the board itself to have a discussion about that. And just as Mr. Manning said, that we have a lot of folks that want to use that and want to incorporate alcohol. We do have a lot of Christians out here too who don't believe in schools, alcohol in the building. So he's gotten phone calls and so have I. So I'd like to have a discussion about that.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins Johnson. And actually, this is the discussion that we're having right now. Mr. Manning?
Mr. Chair, I would like to say that I am a Christian who is okay with the use of spirits in the facility. And I believe that we put all the safety protocols and mechanisms. We've had no issue with the use of beer and wine with any of our programs where it affects our students in a negative way. We also, if you take your child to a restaurant that serves alcohol, then you've put your child in the same environment that we're looking to do here. And I think that all of us have taken our children to Chili's, to Wild Wings, to you name any restaurant that's out there, and there is hard liquor, beer, wine that's served in those facilities. And this building is a community center. It is a school, but it's also a community center, and that was the purpose of it, and I want to make sure that we get to use that and provide that opportunity to our entire community.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Dr. Hawkins Johnson.
Yes, just want to remind everyone, we just had the fifth graders from Pontiac to come up to talk about the DARE program. And I also had an opportunity that I was going to say for later to say congratulations to Joseph Kill's fifth grade team on their graduation of DARE. We're teaching students through the DARE program to resist alcohol and drugs, but yet as a board we want to support alcohol and drugs in our school building. So we want to make sure that we're sending the correct message to our students, our parents, and our community.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins Johnson. Any other comments, input?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shad.
Dr. Franklin, I don't know if you can answer this, or maybe Dr. Miley, but do we know how many thank you, Ms. Ruth. Potential customers have specifically said that they did not want to use our services because we did not allow, and I know we keep saying spirits, but we got to be careful with that word. Liquor.
Yes, sir.
How many folks have actually said, we're not coming because you all won't allow us to bring liquor on your property?
Since we've been recording it, July 1, basically, from July 1 to March 31st, we've turned away 14 events, and those range anywhere from wedding receptions to family reunions, rehearsal dinners, as well as some formal events. So it's been 14 total events that we have. But we also, that's the ones that have approached us and asked. We don't know how many may know ahead of time that that's not, and just they don't consider this location as a venue because they know those rules are already in place.
Second question, how many do we know came because beer and wine was allowed? Because I know that was a discussion when we first
I don't have those
building.
numbers in front of me, but
Right.
I'll be glad to do that. I know we just had a conference last week with, actually, it's the Association for Learning Environment. So it's your school districts send people as well as architects. And I know they had it here. That's part of their after-hours events. They would not have had it here if they didn't have it. We've had a couple of corporations, I think, have award dinners here who've had that, but I'll be glad to pull that number for you.
Okay, and
as
the last category, how many folks do we have that came to us because we were not allowing liquor on campus?
I
Don't know, do
Don't
you?
know, no, sir.
I didn't think.
And I will
that's the
tell
answer I
you,
expected.
yeah, I will tell you that we had 322 total events from July 1st to July 31st. 48 of those were non-Richland School District 2. So those were the only, out of that, the 48, that's the only ones who had the potential to serve beer or wine, because school district events in the conference center, our events, Richland 2 events, or school events would not be able to do that. It's just for private
So 48 private customers.
had the potential. Not all of them did, but that's the total number from just July to March.
That we had contracts with.
Yes, sir.
But 14 said, we won't come because you all won't allow.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we have one pending in August as well.
So, okay, hold on one second, Mr. Chair. So potentially, we could have had 62 private folks, whether they wanted to serve beer and wine or also have liquor, but we ended up getting 48 of that 62
Yes, sir.
since July 1.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shedd. Any other questions?
Just
I
a
have a
comment.
question.
Okay, Ms. Mackey, and then to Dr. Hawkins
Just a
Johnson.
comment, since we're talking to the public, regardless of where you stand on this issue, I just want people to know that we're not serving alcohol in schools in this district. That would be very irresponsible, and I don't want anybody to have that impression. Regardless of where you stand on the issue, it's your personal preference, but we would never serve alcohol in any of our schools, and R2I2 is a conference center. Those of us who are on the board when the decision was made, I think it was probably pending before I even got on the board. It's a conference center to be competitive with places like Seawells. There's not any place in Northeast, from my understanding, as I was told when I got on the board, that there wasn't a place in Northeast to be competitive with a place like Seawells, which is where all the proms and things of that nature were sold. So I just wanted to make the record clear that we're not serving any kind of alcohol in any schools. R2I2 is a conference center. When people rent that conference center, there is security and mechanisms in place, and it's nothing during the school day, but that's a conference center. When it's being rented out, it's being used as a conference center. So I just don't want anybody to think that Richland 2 School Board is being irresponsible and serving anything illegally, or anything alcohol-wise in any school settings, because that would be just taboo.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Dr. Hawkins Johnson.
Well, before I make my additional comment, I want to go back to what Mrs. Mackey said. And actually, I was on the school board when we made this decision, and this was a school. We voted on this to be a school, not a conference center. This is a school building. The conference center was an additional to bring in the media, the library, and some other events. So it was not voted on for it to be only a conference center. And I was on the school board at that time, and I was very vocal about it, and I'm still very vocal about having liquor in a facility where we do educate our students. And also, I guess my question would be, Ms. Ruth, did we get any input from the community? I know we have different community meetings on several other events and activities that's going on in our school. Did we contact the community to see how they feel about having liquor inside of a school building?
Outside of the first round, when we did this, when we had the 2 readings for the new board policy at that time, we would have had a first reading, and then it would have been on the agenda for the second reading. So they had that opportunity then. But since then, no, this was, just came up here tonight, so have not, so no, ma'am, not
So-
at this point. Other than the community members certainly who have, the individuals who have approached us are community members here and are wanting to have, like I said, wedding receptions and stuff that are in this area. So I would consider that some feedback from them.
Well, I'd like to ask my colleagues if they would consider tabling this to allow us to get with the community and see how the community actually feels about it.
No, this isn't up for vote, so it's open discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Manning.
I still stand by my recommendation to add it to the policy, because we have had a year, we have had the community speak to us through their business, and as you said, Ms. Roof, we don't know how many didn't come to us that, just knew that's our policy and put it on the table. So I say we try it out for a year, just like we did the others, and see what kind of result we get. We have the safety mechanisms in place to keep our students away from alcohol and to protect them with extra security, and the students, we can't have active school activities in the building when there's alcohol in the building. So we've proven that our practices are effective in preventing access to our students with beer and wine, and I don't think it's any different with liquor. So I still stand by the recommendation to add it to our policy.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Ms. Agostini.
This is shifting it in a little bit of a different direction. I'm just looking at the policy in general. And a couple of questions in what it states in the policy. The names of the trained servers responsible for serving the alcohol and proof of their training, and that has to happen 30 days prior to?
Right, and what we do is we have approved caterers, so it really happens well above that, because they are approved and that's part of it, so they use one of those caterers as a license.
So the caterer or the bartending service, you're not looking for the individual name of who's coming?
Right,
Okay.
right, yes.
All right, and then my second question is, the applicant leasee will determine an appropriate level of security and staffing for the event and make arrangements to have security during the entire event. I have had experience using the facility here, and that was not the case. We were told by the district what we had to have. It wasn't something that we were able to determine ourselves.
That's correct. The school district determines that, that, I'm not sure why that's
Maybe
written
we
like
want
that,
to have a
but we-
change in the policy
Yeah,
then.
we do need to update that, because we set the number based on the number who are coming, what we may have going on in the building. And I'll just mention, while I'm talking about what's going on in the building, that, and I will double check this, but I believe it's not in the policy, but it's been our practice that we don't allow any events that are going to serve alcohol to occur until after school hours. So that we definitely, the school part of the building has been vacated. But then we determine the number of security based on how many are coming, if we have another, like if the library is open, or if we have libraries have an event, and then number of people, and then if they are serving the alcohol.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Agostini. Or are you?
If I may add, as I've mentioned several times, this has been a learning experience over the course of that year, and that's one of the things we learned early on, was that we needed to dictate how much security, because we were liable for everything, and we need to ensure the safety, so we determined the level of security needed. So
Okay.
that's one of those things that we learned as we went on, and the policy does need to be added.
So we can, okay, correct that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Agostini. Mr. Shad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So of course, I wasn't on the board at this time that the decision was made for even beer and wine to be part of our policy. But I'm curious if you all can answer, or members of the board that were on the board, how is it that we even got to beer and wine? Was this some compromise not to have all of the alcohol that's available and just, or none at all, and they just said, okay, beer and wine? What's the idea behind apparently beer and wine being okay, but liquor not?
I can start with that. Let me start with that, and then I'll come to you. So I was on the board as well when this decision was made, and we decided that, really the issue here is we serve alcohol at this facility already, and so whether it's beer, wine, or liquor, the last I checked, you can have 10 beers and walk out of here just as drunk as you can have 10 liquor drinks or 10 glasses of wine. So we're already serving that. I know at the time, Ms. Shad, that there was a compromise just because there was some differences of opinion at the time that we would go with beer and wine as an initial start, as a compromise, and then see how that would play out over this year. And now that we've had some time with the conference center, the way it's been, and some of the potential lost revenue, and the fact that we already serve alcohol and we serve it after hours, not while there are school attendance, that we would bring it back. And so that's why this subject has come up. Did you have any other comments on that?
No,
okay,
I need
Dr.
to
Hawkins Johnson.
Yes, I want to make a comment on that. There was a compromise, but I never compromised my morals and my values. So if you go back and look, you will see that although it was approved, it wasn't approved and not unanimous. I voted against having the wine also, and I would stand firm to what I believe in, no alcohol in a school building. And I want to go back to something that you guys mentioned earlier about there will be no alcohol while students are here. The library is open until, I think, 8 or 9 o'clock, so we will have students in the building. So I want to clarify that. We keep saying that there's no alcohol while not during school hours.
School hours, meaning
Right.
for that, it's meaning that the school part of the building would not be operating at that time. So, and if R2I2, the Student Learning Center, was to have an event and there was a private event and they were having an official school event, that private event would not be able to serve alcohol, so if they had an after-hours event. But yes, the library is open, and again, that's why when we take into consideration the security, if it is during the hours that the library is open. Typically, these, I will say, and I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but I would say fairly common that these are on the weekends. And library hours, I believe, is 6 o'clock for Saturday night. So typically, you'll see these Friday night and Saturday night events. So that is one way. And we try to be very cognizant of when we're approving these events of what is going on in the library. We work very closely with them, and they have not expressed any concerns with them. We meet with them monthly. They haven't expressed any concerns, and they actually have fundraising events in some of their facilities with alcohol. So just to give you that piece of advice, I mean, not advice, of information that we are working with them,
Right.
because I do understand that is a good question. Yes,
And
ma'am.
just one other thing, I know that schools are trying to become a business, but are we about business of trying to see how much money we can get, or we're about the integrity of doing what's right for our students, especially with our DARE program? We just had that conversation.
Yes, before Mr. Manning, I did want to say, because we do have members of the media here, also it's on YouTube, I think I may have said we serve alcohol here in Richland too. Let me rephrase that. Alcohol is served, allowed to be served here. I want to clarify that a bit. In addition, I do know that the security you mentioned earlier was during events in which alcohol is being served, part of the security detail is to monitor any youths making their way up into that area. Is that correct?
Well, it's several things to help with that, yes. One of it is they are confined to the conference center area, so they can't come downstairs. They have to stay in that confined area, so we have the security for that. Then you have all the stipulations on the serving side. That has to be a licensed caterer, a licensed bartending service, so they are trained in not serving any type of underage issues or things like that. So yes, we have done that. And again, we have the people down here, we have them up there monitoring where individuals go.
Thank you, Ms. Roof. Mr. Manning.
I can't help but feel a little bit like my character and morals are being questioned, but I'm here for the community. This is a mixed-use facility, part of which is not so much a business, but to serve a need in the community, which has been demonstrated by the number of folks that have used this facility to have joyous occasions like weddings, to have birthdays, family reunions, and this is just an opportunity to further extend that community service in a way that the community has asked for it. And we're also not the only public facility that allows children, that allows liquor and other alcohol. The Recreation Commission, the Public Library, I think has events, and the museum are all examples of places where children frequent, and they do allow those things to be served.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Any other questions or comments regarding this policy?
Mr. Plank, I do have the numbers that I gave in print, and so I can hand these out if that's with the help with y'all's discussions.
Okay. Well, at this point, then the next step, I appreciate everyone's discussion, everyone's input on this. The next step, of course, would be, at this point, I'm feeling that there is a will of the board to have this policy looked at and presented before us with the changes of considering the liquor at that point. And we can take it up for action and see what happens there.
Well, Mr. Chair, before you do that, we were just given information at the last minute. So I would still ask that we have more time to digest this information and to have more of a discussion. And I'm still going to hold firm that when we're talking about an education building and facility, it's to educate our students, not to introduce them to wine, beer, and liquor.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins Johnson. So this, I'm not referring to tonight. This would be in 2 weeks. So you'll have time to look over that. And if you have any questions, any detail, I encourage you to talk with the executive team and Dr. Davis about other numbers or issues. Dr. Franklin.
Right. There will still be 2 readings.
Two readings, okay.
At the first meeting, there will be a proposal, and at the second meeting, take action.
Thank you. Okay.
Just one other thing I'd like to do, if I can get permission from the board, is if we can open this up to community and maybe have some kind of community forum before we proceed with this, I think that would be great. And it would help me also to see what the community is thinking and how they're feeling about us allowing this building to serve liquor during events.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Manning.
I stand by the fact, again, I'll repeat, the community has spoken by the fact that we have events that have gone unfulfilled because of a need in the community. To further delay this, I think we need to just either take action or not. I would like to see it on the agenda, and the board can make the decision as to whether we move forward or not. I don't think we need to further delay this.
Thank you, Mr. Manning.
And I would like to go back to that. He said that the community have spoken, but based on the numbers that you shared, there's only 14 who chose not to use the building. That's not a great representation of our community.
Okay, any other further discussion on this? Okay, then you would come back with a proposal, and then we'll take a look and then go from there. All right, thank you so much. At this point now, we're going to move on to our next item, which is 12.3, Update Trauma-Informed Schools. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we will have a update on trauma-informed schools, and our very own Dr. Shirley Vickery will provide that update. Dr. Vickery.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Chairman Plank, Dr. Davis, members of the board, members of the public. I want to start this discussion with a little bit of review of our learning support services in Richland 2, and then we'll move into trauma-informed practices. The concept of learning support services received national attention in 2006 when the UCLA School Mental Health Project recommended school reforms to address barriers to learning and promote healthy development among students. The authors realized that schools are not responsible for meeting every need of students and that it's simply not possible for schools to do that. But they noted that schools must focus on those things that affect learning in order to help students make progress. The concept of learning support services came from these reforms. The notion relates to the helping professionals within the schools, our school counselors, our social workers, psychologists, nurses, and others. In Richland 2, we call these folks our learning support services. We created intentional linkages between these professionals, combining and coordinating efforts to make the most of the skills of each professional in the group. So what does LSS look like in Richland 2? Our district leadership team consists of leaders of each profession devoted to student health, behavior, social development, and so forth. The leaders of counseling, social work, nursing, psychologists, and family intervention services are in this group, along with leaders of BEST, CARE, parent educators, and our bilingual services. Some LSS leaders have joined us tonight, and I ask them to stand and be recognized. You guys. Got some all over the room. Thank you. These team members promote their own professions, but they also assist district-wide in initiatives that cut across professions, including supports for positive behavior, individual student interventions, and crisis responding. Our school-level teams consist of these same professionals in each school, and they combine talents and skills to make the most of knowledge each profession brings to the table. We remind people that every part of a student is important in understanding a kid. Sometimes it's our school nurses who become first aware of the needs of a student. When we create linkages between professions, we give everyone the contacts and relationships so that we don't miss obvious signs that students show us. Recently, our LSS team became intensely aware of the impact of trauma on our students in schools. We learned about the ACEs research, which many of you have heard about, and which focuses on the impacts of adverse childhood experiences on later physical health, emotional well-being, and educational and career outcomes. ACEs include divorce or family separation, emotional abuse, substance use, domestic violence, mental illness, or incarceration. Students with increased levels of ACEs often have higher rates of other problems related to learning and school, including risky behaviors, mental health concerns, chronic diseases, and learning weaknesses. We as a team wanted to make sure that our teachers, school administrators, and staff were aware of the research we were learning. We know that our behavior as school people makes a real difference in the reactions of our students. We moved forward first to train members of our LSS leadership team in trauma-informed practices and strategies for increasing student and staff resilience. We required our LSS staff members to complete training developed by MUSC on trauma and children. We began the 17-18 school year by partnering with the Children's Trust to train all the staff and instructional support services on the impact of ACEs on students. We trained our counselors at Family Intervention Services in how to treat trauma. We purchased the movie Paper Tigers, a story of one school which incorporated trauma-informed practices, and we've shown that to hundreds of staff members and then led discussion groups. We've also partnered with community agencies such as the United Way, its Resilient Richland campaign, and the South Carolina Youth Suicide Prevention Initiative to seek community assistance in our efforts. So where do we see this going? What strategies do we foster by the incorporation of these notions? What would happen if we all thought, what happened to you, not what is wrong with you? We see these strategies that we're trying to put into place, and they work. More staff members are aware of ACEs and their importance in understanding children's development. This year, our BEST team trained staff members on restorative practices, and some of our own district staff have become trainers. Our team teaches staff de-escalation skills. Our LSS staff members emphasize problem solving and resilience among staff and students. We teach students to seek help when they need it, and we encourage all people to build and maintain caring relationships which allow skills to be nurtured throughout all of our schools. We thank you for your support of these efforts, and we're eager to keep watching these things happen and see what else we can accomplish. Questions? Sure.
Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Vickery, a few questions.
Sure.
First of all, thank you all for all of y'all's responses to this 21st century child. I'm glad that the science is now, well, the science might have already been there, but we're catching up to it.
We are.
And again, it's not what's wrong with the child, but what has happened to happen so that we all can be informed in how to address what we may characterize as misbehavior or disrespect. Might be something may have happened to them on that day or has happened years ago or even in the womb. I'm
Right.
still learning about that, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, now help me out.
Okay.
How do we determine a child's ACE score?
Okay. We are not determining at this point a child's ACEs score. We don't routinely give children that assessment, so we don't know these things for sure. The ACEs really is meant to be a self-reported score, and it mostly originally was used with adults looking back and reporting their own experience with trauma. So we aren't using it directly with kids. Now, we do find out things from parents and from the children themselves many times, and from history that we know.
Okay. So, well, all right. And you kept saying staff. That includes faculty, or are you just saying the nurses, the guidance counselors, the social workers, the psychologists, in terms of the information being shared with them?
We sort of worked at it in layers. We started with our leadership team, making sure they were up to speed. Then we moved with the LSS staff members at every school. That's our helping professionals. And then we've moved to staff in a broader sense. I can't say we've gotten to every single staff member at this point, but that's our goal.
Okay.
We're working with as many different groups as we can.
All right. Has it occurred, or do you expect it to occur, that this information will be provided to our SROs so that they can also identify with that child, or at least have an understanding about that child, and then that could inform what they do?
Well, a couple years ago, our SROs actually, or Richland County Sheriff's Department, actually invited us to do some training with them. So we participated in joint trainings, and then they followed up with things that have been independently planned by the Sheriff's Office that I'm aware of.
Okay. With everything that Learning Support Services is doing, specifically with ACE and the BEST program, how does all this information inform a decision on discipline in our best schools and in our non-best schools?
Discipline decisions are actually very complicated decisions, and the staff at the school will make decisions on an individual basis about a child and what the appropriate response to that is. It doesn't mean that there are no consequences used, or that student behavior is not dealt with in some fashion, but that the response to the child is really appropriate and reasoned out based on what's happening. So that's a pretty difficult question to answer for every situation, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you so much for your responses. Mrs. Chair, I just want to make a comment. My hope is that this exchange of information will be looked at by the group that was here 2 weeks ago, so they can be better informed about what processes and procedures we have in place to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shad. Ms. Mackey.
Mr. Shad, you actually answered some of my questions through your exchange with Mr. Shad. One of the things I appreciate is just what I hear you saying is that you are starting to introduce this ideology, which is a reality, to the schools. I grew up the child of an educator, and my mom used to always tell me that parents send to school the absolute best they have.
They do.
If they could send you a better student or whatever they would have, that they send you the absolute best they have where they are. And so your job is to teach the student where they are. And what you've done is encapsulated that with regard to trauma-informed education and just making people aware. It can start with one person. You may not be able to get every single staff person yet at the district, but starting where you are to get people to think differently. At our State School Improvement Council conference, our annual meeting last year, we had someone from the State Department who came and shared this information with us. And it was just eye-opening for people in the room to stop and think about what, and I'm aware, I was aware, children may come to school hungry. That may be the only meal they get that day. Backpack students, that's all they get that weekend, and they got to share it with siblings and things of that nature. So actually putting a name to absolute parents sending to school the absolute best they have and trying to get people to have to begin to have some sympathy. You may not be able to empathize, but if you have some sympathy and you can share that with people in your sphere of influence or your sphere of collegiality is a great start. So I appreciate that, and I echo Mr. Shadd's sentiments as well, but I appreciate what you all are doing because it will spread from there, just like a tree root. It will spread. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Dr. Hawkins Johnson.
I'd like to say thank you for what your team is doing, and I like to see that what happened to you instead of what is wrong with you. That is part of the restorative practices that we teach, because I'm also a restorative practice trainer, so I'm glad to see that you guys are really using the language in an effective way. And one thing that we do teach in restorative practices, we teach empathy, not sympathy. So I'm glad that you guys are learning empathy and not sympathy. The other thing I'd like to ask is, I know that some of you guys have gone through the training and you're getting ready to train the trainers. How many people have gone through the training? How many schools?
Initially you're talking about the restorative practices
Restorative
training?
practices.
The initial group of educators who were trained represented a variety of schools, and there were 44 people who were trained. Then from that group, we selected 12 to become trainers.
So will those
That's the right
trainers
number,
go out and train the faculty and staff within those schools?
We've made agreements with them that they will do a certain number of trainings for schools and faculty groups throughout the year for us.
Okay, when would that process start?
They
Next
just
year?
finished their training this spring, so we'll be scheduling things as soon as we can. You guys
Dr.
have any-
Elkins Johnson, we are working now, Mr. Smith and I, on a plan to continue to roll out restorative practice training. We're actually going to have another training where we'll train 45 additional people across the system. We'll, of course, have an opportunity for our internal trainers to assist, but also bringing in a local trainer to work with an additional 45 people. And we'll look to pick up schools maybe that did not send to that original training, and that will be a part of the summer training that you'll hear about from Ms. Gregory and at the, I think the next board, in the June board meeting, the dates and times that we'll be offering additional restorative training.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that. Thank you.
We're very excited about that.
Dr. Vickery, if I may, I know I want to talk metrics for success and what success looks like from what you've talked about. And I certainly know we can measure that through how many people are being trained and who are teaching and putting out into the process of these programs. But what's the measurement or the metrics involved for measuring success with the outcome of the students?
With the student outcomes? Well, we really do hope for differences in disciplinary ratings. We really do hope for that. We hope for classroom teachers also to perceive themselves as more effective in their relationships and their ability to bring forth positive student behavior. So that classroom teacher metric is an important one too.
And when I hear you saying you hope for those, and I do too, do we have any sort of defined objective measurements that we're using to help know when we're on target, if we're going off target, if it's being successful, if we're missing the mark? I'm just curious about that.
We do have discipline records, and we look at those really frequently, school by school and year by year.
And so are there goals or strategies that are outlined that know if the target's been met? And I know, Dr. Davis, you want to kind of sum some of this up, and maybe you'll be able to answer that, but I just wanted to see, was it when we're saying, okay, here are all the things we're putting into play to address some of the issues that we have, what do we know if we're hitting the target, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty difficult target. We can't move discipline to zero. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to make a stab at this. We really hope those things go in a downward direction compared to the number of students we have.
Okay.
We hope especially that we recommend fewer students for expulsion. We've seen some years when we did get big decreases in that. That tends to change a little bit year to year. It's not always in a complete downward trend.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a specific target that's outlined?
No.
I don't think
Okay.
so.
I don't, let me jump.
Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. There's no specific target that's outlined. I think just to give a clarification for the board, first, this whole concept around ACEs is fairly new in Richland too for us to address. So roughly, the CDC found that roughly 46% of all students experience at least one ACE in their lives. But students have their 8 measures that measure ACEs, and there are a certain percentage of people in the country who experience 4 or more ACEs. Many of the ACEs are issues that take place in the home environment. They're not necessarily issues. These are divorced parents, an abusive parent, violence, drugs, mental illnesses, living with a guardian versus living with your parent, having incarcerated parents. Many of the ACEs that students have are issues that are taking place in the home community. What our challenge is initially was to bring awareness of just general awareness of what ACEs are, or what an ACE is in the district. So that as you're interacting with the student, you realize that if you know that this student may be a student whose parents are incarcerated, then their behavior may be connected to that. So creating the awareness, which then will create the empathy for the student situation. Basically being able to put yourself in that student's shoes, and then help the students to try to overcome that barrier as it impacts his or her learning within the school, within their classroom. One of the real issues with ACEs is not only that it impacts their learning, but there's a physiological or a physical reaction or response to having all of this trauma and stress in your lives that has a toll on them over time, which could hinder them in their development or even shorten their lives. And so some of those things we're not going to be able to alleviate or even remove from the student's life, but it is really upon us to be aware of the ACEs and help the student overcome those ACEs so it doesn't impact their academic success, doesn't impact their social emotional development, and doesn't impact try to minimize their impact moving forward. So we haven't really set a target of, number one, we don't know how many students in our schools have ACEs, experience an ACE, but the data tells us at least 46% nationwide. We can refer, I guess we can infer that is also the case in our district, but some states is more than 50% of every child has at least one ACE or more. And so really our onus right now is how do we create an environment that reduces the number of ACEs that a student may even experience in the schools. We don't want the schools to be a source of an ACE. We don't want the adults in the building to create adverse childhood experiences for our students where they feel threatened or intimidated. So we work on a system to make sure our culture and environment is one that is safe and secure and one that promotes social and emotional growth and learning and academic achievement. So we want to reduce that. And so we have things like Capturing Kids' Hearts that talks about building relationships with students. We have things like the restorative justice, restorative practices models, and the BEST models that work on building relationships to try to reduce the impact of ACEs. But I don't think we have it within our wherewithal to reduce the ACEs that students bring from home. We just don't want to amplify them in the school environment.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Any question? Mr. Shedd.
Mr. Chair, and I think Dr. Davis must have known where I was going with this. The challenge that I see, Chairman Plank was asking about metrics and how are we going, what are the measurable outcomes and that sort of thing. Especially with an ACEs child, I hate to even label it that way, but Dr. Victor, I'm sure you'll agree with me that the challenge is we put forth all of this effort and the child is quote unquote fine, but only when they are in the school building. That child still may have to return to an environment that either created the ACEs or is perpetuating it. So I can just understand that that's just a daily challenge for our staff to quote unquote deal with, where, because we do have an expectation when you come to the school, there are rules and regulations and school student behavior policies that have to be complied with. But when we further understand why that's not the case because of what happened last night or on the way to school, because, our children are facing some very real challenges and we want to address that. However, once we send that kid back home and they had a good day, we don't know if the next day is going to be a bad one. And my heart goes and prayers go out to you all and all that y'all do. So I definitely am grateful for what all you all do, our faculty. And then lastly, Because of policy, I'm not able to take pictures of this wonderful slideshow. So if you don't mind emailing me the PowerPoint presentation, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shad. Ms. Mackey.
Appreciate your support.
Just wanted to reiterate, I appreciate Dr. Davis elaborating on your intent behind ACE, and just as a key point to think about, not all students are going to have anything tangible as an adverse childhood experience. You know when a child is going through a divorce, or someone's not at home, or someone's incarcerated, but you don't know about, abuse that may not be reported, or hunger. They're not, on a free and reduced lunch per se, but they're hungry. So just wanted to make people mindful too that when parents are sending to us the best they have, they may have adverse child experiences that you can't see, that they can't talk about, that are not tangible.
And this is part of what we're trying to sensitize staff so that staff don't do things which bring forth negative feelings among students that we really weren't expecting. So how do we approach students differently to avoid those triggers and those things that bring forth bad feelings and usually negative behavior too?
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Any other questions or comments from the board? Dr. Baker, we appreciate that thorough and appreciate the challenge that you have ahead, and appreciate your team for all the hard work you guys do. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll now move on to item 12.4, which is our update Fort Jackson Education Partnership. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have coming before us to provide an update on the premier partnership between Richland 2 and Fort Jackson. We have Ms. Dawn Whitley and Mr. Roger Wiley.
Partnership with Fort Jackson and give you updates on what's been happening. First, we've got a timeline of our major interactions. Roger and I have been doing this for a while, and it seems like the trigger of everything that we've done with Fort Jackson stemmed from the Memorandum of Agreement in 2001. And from that developed a local action plan that we put a lot of time and effort in, and Partners in Education meetings, which were monthly meetings that involved principals and district office staff and school counselors, along with the Fort Jackson community. In 2010, when the MIC3 Interstate Compact hit, that was tremendous in helping us support and really realizing what support was needed. The Partners in Education meetings led us to become more empathetic with the struggles that our military families were having with transition. And the MIC3 Compact formalized some of the issues that we needed to know, that we knew needed to be addressed. For example, you might have a child that's in first grade in Wyoming, he moves to Mississippi and didn't meet the age cutoff date, and then would move him to kindergarten. The common sense stuff, the compact took care of, but it also stimulated a lot of conversation. Throughout this time, we were invited to Fort Jackson board meetings and parent meetings, and really everything was just rolling along, kind of petered out there around 2014-15, things kind of slowed down. And I can quote Colonel McGlammon saying that they were a little distracted by war. But now we've gotten refocused again. And certainly we are going at it like gangbusters. And Roger's going to explain some of the moving parts that impact our choice and registration decisions for military.
Fort Jackson has a number of residents, including active duty military, civilians, and recently retired military families. Children of active duty military parents attend the Fort Jackson Dodea schools in grades pre-K through 6. While 7th grade through 12th grade attend school in Richland 2 due to Dodea schools not serving those grades. There's an exception with rising 6th graders applying for school within the school magnet programs. In order to maximize the opportunities for acceptance, they must apply in 6th grade. If accepted, then they attend Richland School District 2. The students of civilian and retired military families are not eligible to attend school on Fort Jackson's Dodea schools, so they attend Richland 2. They may attend their zone school, or they may apply for choice, just as all students do. Where applicable, Fort Jackson residents are zoned to attend Forest Lake Elementary, Dent Middle School, or Richland Northeast High School. You know, in order to apply for a choice in Richland 2, a family must reside in Richland 2. They can't be planning to move here. It's pretty cut and dry. They must reside here. But we work with our military families differently. We set up a mechanism for them to communicate to us what they're getting ready to do. They provide us a few pieces of documentation, and then we'll allow them to apply for Choice 1 and Choice 2 while they're living out of Richland 2. You know, this exception helps military students transition and make a smooth transition. Not only do we do this during Choice 1 and 2, but it continues out through the summer. The difference being during the summer as schools start reaching their maximum capacity, we close those schools as an option. So.
We've done a lot this year to strengthen our partnerships. I think in the past, we have been guests of the board. They've invited us to participate in things, whether to speak to the school board or to parent committees. But I think in this year, we have truly formed a partnership where there is engagement on both sides. Our current initiatives right now, we had the Fort Jackson Educational Summit, which was March 9th. That was a tremendous event with concurrent sessions. But most people got so engaged in their first session, they didn't move on to a second session. They wanted to stay in the first one, and that's great if you can do that. They did a tremendous job. From that, we now have a school choice working group that meets monthly. We had our first meeting April 24th, and we have been included as part of the Fort Jackson Education Advisory Council, which is a group that sees to the needs, the complete needs, whether it's social work or housing or helping military spouses get involved in secondary education. But it's a tremendous group that comes together and just kind of keeps an eye on what's going on and where the needs are, and keeps an eye on the pulse of what's going on in the Fort Jackson community. But I think that certainly with General Johnson at the lead and heading up our educational summit, it's been tremendous. Colonel McLam has been very, very involved. And so Colonel McLam in the back, wave here, has been very involved. You've seen him at all of our school board meetings. Mrs. Sunny Bolton is here. Sunny, wave. Sunny's been very involved in setting up all of our meetings. We also have our school liaison officers, Dr. Fred Henley and Gary Williams, which are here as well. But I feel like this is really becoming a team that is going to work well together. Our central issues that we're discussing right now, always access to choice. And how does that impact when military families are coming in? What type of choice options will they have? Improved communication, and we need more of it. If we've got special considerations for parents that are PCSing into Fort Jackson, how do we get the communication to the parents that need that information? So we are trying to go back and forth at our work group sessions on how we can do a better job. Expansion of course offerings. Something that's being discussed right now is the addition of Army ROTC to Richland Northeast High School. So, yeah, go Army, go Army. But again, a collaborative program. I think we're willing to do it, but we need their help in order to make sure that it happens quickly and that our students can take advantage of it quickly. We do have some clubs, activities, and information, especially for military students here in Richland too. And this is just a very small example. On our website, we have military family support with links down the side there. But we look forward to doing more to work with Fort Jackson. And things are changing with General Beagle coming on board, but I think these initiatives have momentum that they will continue regardless of leadership. I think there's just a strong group that's going to move it forward.
If you have any questions.
Mr. Chair.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Wiley. I got a call right before school choice ended from a military family that's going to move here this summer. And anyhow, you were very responsive to their needs and you took care of them. And they really appreciate it. And I thank you too for taking care of them so quickly.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Agostini. Mr. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we have any staff on Fort Jackson that have access to our employee choice program now?
Any staff?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We have access to employee?
Employee choice.
Yes. If you work in the Fort Jackson, if you're a full-time worker in Fort Jackson school system, we'll allow employee choice to those individuals.
Okay. And those aren't people that we hire or we have any decision over, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to know if we already had, so it sounds like we have some folks already being able to take advantages. That's something that we've considered, maybe an expansion of that, or for other Fort Jackson parents or command staff?
It's been in place for a long time. Not many people are taking advantage of it. I'm not sure if we have any this year. So.
But I'm asking if we've considered maybe expanding that choice to other command staff or folks on base.
You're asking, have we considered that?
Yes, sir.
No, sir. That's not come through us.
Yes, sir. We've had conversations regarding that, but an administrative decision was made not to extend that beyond the employees at this time to command staff at this time. But there has been discussion around that topic.
And so that's a discussion, maybe we can get an update as a board as to what that administrative decision was and the reasons for it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments? And so thank you so much. I just had a couple comments as well. One, I want to thank Colonel McLam and his team for being here so faithfully. We've had groups who will come and talk for a meeting, maybe public session, and then we don't see them again. You guys have rekindled the relationship that Fort Jackson and Richland 2 has. It's embedded in our community. It's embedded in our district. And so we appreciate the work that you guys have done, and we certainly understand a war getting in the way. And we're glad to have this partnership and glad to see that we're working faithfully. I had the privilege of being part of that Education Summit. It was a great opportunity to really understand parents and service members and the needs that they have. So appreciate all you do, appreciate what you do for our country, and appreciate the partnership that we have. And thank you guys so much for the work you're doing to continue to strengthen that and to look at opportunities, to Mr. Manning's point, to look at other options that may be there that may be unique to the military family. So thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we will now move on to our next item, which is 12.5 update, the accountability model. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We have Dr. John Arnold who will come before you this evening to share with you an update on our accountability model for the state of South Carolina. Dr. Arnold.
Chairman Plank, Dr. Davis, members of the board, it's my pleasure to be here to provide a brief update to the revisions and changes to the state's accountability plan called South Carolina Succeeds. As you'll note, it was submitted to the U.S. Department of Education on October 13th and was just approved a mere 5 days ago, got our final official approval, on May 3rd. As a reminder, the South Carolina Succeed plan has two long-term goals. These goals have not changed since I first presented this to you in January. As with previous accountability plans that we've had in South Carolina, the South Carolina Succeeds plan will provide annual ratings for all schools. The rating that each school receives will be based on the number of points the school earns compared to the number of points earned by other schools. The results from year 1 will be used to set cut points in the ratings for years 2 through 5. The cut points for the ratings will be recalculated in year 6. And this also has not changed since my last presentation. Again, as a reminder, there are 5 categories in which schools will earn points that are used to determine their rating. For elementary and middle schools, academic achievement will be measured by student performance on the SC Ready ELA and math tests or the SC Alt tests and will compose 35% of the points. Academic progress will be measured by student growth from one year to the next on SC Ready ELA and math or SC Alt, and it will also comprise 35% of the points. English proficiency will be measured by student growth on the Access for ELS test and will be 10% of the points. Preparing for success will measure student performance on SC Pass Science and Social Studies and is also 10%. The final 10% of points for elementary and middle comes from the effective learning environment, and that is based on the results of a new student engagement survey. Some of the elementary schools in Richland 2 will not have the 20 English language learner students that's required to have a subgroup. For those schools, the 10 points that would have gone to language proficiency will be divided equally into academic achievement and academic progress. So instead of 35 and 35, it becomes 40 and 40 for those schools. For high schools, academic achievement will be measured by student performance on the English 1 and Algebra 1 end of course tests. The scores that will be used are from the graduating cohort. So some of these tests were taken 3 to 4 years ago. There is no growth measure for high school, so instead 25% of the points will come from the school's 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate. College and career readiness will be based on the percent of students who meet the criteria in one or both categories, and we'll touch on those again. And that section is also 25% of the points. English proficiency will be measured, again, Access for ELS, and will be 10% of the points. Student performance on biology and U.S. history and constitution end of course tests will be used to calculate the preparing for success measure and will be 10%. And then finally, the high school students will take the student engagement survey, which will be the final 5% of points that can be earned by high schools. So there are a few things that have changed since I was up here in January. First, the state has selected the student engagement survey. Advanced Ed was selected as the contractor to provide that survey. It's being taken by students in grades 3 through 12. The survey is a 20-question online survey, and it's being administered, again, to elementary, middle school, and high, each with their own version of the survey. It takes about 15 minutes for the students to complete the survey. The window started in April and will end on Friday, May 18th. So that is in progress right now. There have also been some revisions to college readiness. One of the things that's remained the same is that scoring a 20 or higher on the ACT composite or a 1020 or higher on the SAT is one way that students can demonstrate that they're college ready. Previously, AP exams scores of a 3 or higher were only accepted for English, math, science, or social studies or an AP capstone. However, on the revised plan, scores of a 3 or higher are accepted for any College Board AP course. Similarly, IB scores of a 4 or higher on a IB higher level course are now accepted from any subject. And the dual credit for coursework is now not limited to English and STEMs, but includes social studies as well. Under college readiness, there's been some changes. The ACT work keys has been replaced by the Worldwide Interactive Network, or WIN, Ready to Work Assessment. The WIN tests include applied mathematics, reading for information, and locating information, which are the same tests that were used by the ACT work keys. In fact, it also uses the same certificate levels to report students' performance. So students will also have the ability now, with the WIN test, to be assessed on soft skills. But this section will not be used in calculating their performance level. It's just reported for the students. A score of 31 or higher on the ASVAB, that's not changed. That's been consistent. Earlier versions of the plans required or allowed students to demonstrate readiness by completing a South Carolina registered youth apprenticeship program. That requirement was found to be a little too restrictive, so students may now demonstrate readiness through a state-approved work-based learning experience that includes a successful employer exit evaluation. So it's not just a part-time job. And then finally, CATE students are no longer limited to just pathways that lead to a nationally recognized industry credential. Completion of a state credential, when no national credential is available, is now accepted as a demonstration of being career ready. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes my presentation on the updates, the revisions to the plan. Of course, there's a lot more to the plan that we've already looked at.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Manning.
You know, it's really hard as a board member, right? The public elects us and asks us to hold the school district accountable for performance. We can't get any kind of measure over any sustained period of time because it's constantly changing. And, you know, I don't know if anybody's been reading the articles in the state newspaper. I know this is Teacher Week, so we love our teachers. Thank y'all. But, you know, this makes it really hard, right? I mean, tonight we have asked our teachers to be mental health experts. We've asked them, you know, our legislators have asked them to be domestic violence experts, to figure out what's going on in the home. One teacher in the state was bringing backpacks and visiting children's homes to try to understand the environment that they come from. We got this More Justice group that wants us to continue to do work that pushes our teachers' time and effort. And then we talk about the accountability, what we expect our teachers to do, and we keep pushing. We're not paying them. We don't give them any respect. And we continue to change the game on what's expected. We talk about we don't want standardized tests, but we continue to push more and more standardized testing down to the teachers and to the school district. And by the way, folks, there is a cost to all of this for us to change materials, to prepare, to provide the training, both at the state level and at the school district level. And this is, you know, it does make it very hard. I can't compare the data from last year to the data 5 years ago on our district. I can't compare it this year to last year. I mean, how are we supposed to even know, Dr. Davis, you know, where we've been or where we're going when we keep changing the scale and changing what we measure? So it's very frustrating. Obviously not taking it out on you. You're just the report. And then they come up with this whole,
I agree,
you know, only the top 15% can be excellent. So a teacher could walk into her classroom and say 15% of y'all are going to have A's, period. That's it. How demotivating would that be in a classroom, but yet we're going to do it to our school system?
Yes, sir.
It's ridiculous, just ridiculous.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Any other questions, comments?
I have a
Dr.
question.
Hawkins Johnson.
I know that we went to the WIN test this school year. Do you know if it was different than the work keys, or was it pretty similar to the work keys?
Very similar. As a matter of fact, it was actually developed from the same research that was conducted by the U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Education Task Force on Workplace Learning. And in fact, I called and spoke to the customer service folks at the WIN network today just to do a little fact checking. And the WIN coursework that is also available through their organization has actually been used by students around the country to prepare for the work keys test. So it is very similar, measures the same concepts in much the same ways. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins Johnson. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Dr. Arnold, for your presentation. To Mr. Manning's point, it is challenging. It's a moving target, and you have done very well in always at least taking what you're supposed to hit and hitting it with us. So thank you for that. All right, we'll move now on to 13.1, which will be agenda items for May 22nd, 2018. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the May 22nd, 2008 future agenda items, we have a public hearing for budget, legal matters, student expulsion and appeal, student readmission requests, adult ed requests, special recognitions, our legislative update. We'll have our approval of policy revisions, GCC, GDC, employee personal leaves and absences, proposal for policy revisions, our second reading on the general fund budget for 2018-2019 school year, a report on policy GBEA, which is conflict of interest, staff ethics, an update on magnet school recognitions, approval of the 10-year facility plan, approval on authorization of the superintendent to apply for available state, federal, foundation, and other special funded programs for the coming fiscal year.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Any other agenda items for future agendas?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Manning.
Since we have such a short list here.
Yeah,
I wanna
sure.
Add to it.
Might as well. We're rocking the 2 hours
we,
lately, so.
The governance committee met today, and we want to bring forward a recommendation to the full board for approval related to, I guess, in lieu of any better term, an overhaul of the discipline system that we'd like to present to administration. So if we could please put that on the agenda.
Thank you. Any other agenda items for future meetings? I'd like to go ahead and add that as part of the policy proposals that we add add to it the policy KFB discussion we had tonight. Okay. Next up is 14.1, which is the public participation number 2. We have no one signed up. Again, if you'd like to address the board, please do so now. Seeing no one, we'll move on to 15.1, our board and superintendent comments. Let me start to my left, Mr. Manning.
Pass.
Ms. Mackey.
Thank you for everyone who's here, because you have to be, and some because you want to be. We appreciate it. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, but in the spirit of giving people their flowers while they're living, I'd like to encourage us all that when you see something good, say something. And people are quick to complain when there's a problem or an issue or they're disgruntled about something, but our educators, our teachers, support staff, the people that make the schools work. I appreciate you this week, but whenever you see someone that's working hard and maybe even having a bad day, just encourage them. Teachers are never off duty. As a child of an educator, you're in the grocery store, wherever you go, you're a teacher. So we appreciate what you do day in and day out, whether we tell you that or show you that or not. Bless you.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Dr. Hawkins Johnson.
Yes, as I said earlier, I had an opportunity to attend the DARE graduation at Joseph Kill, so congratulations to all of the 5th grade schools that had DARE events. And also, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. Thank you for all that you do. You wear many, many hats. You spend a lot of your money, and you spend countless hours in the school. So we do appreciate you. At least I appreciate you because I wear those shoes every day myself. So thank you for what you do and what you continue to do.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins Johnson. Dr. Caution Parker.
Mine's going to be short in essence of time since we have another meeting after the meeting. But this was a good meeting this evening and a lot of great information and really appreciate all this wonderful information that we received this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Caution Parker. Mr. Shad.
Happy Appreciation Week, and thank God for a child's first teacher, mothers. Thank you. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Mr. Shad. Ms. Agostini.
I wanted to congratulate all those that were recognized today. I will say when we go out to schools, I do get teased by my fellow board members sometimes that I know everybody through swimming. Well, half that group that was up here today either coached or taught swimming, so it was great to see all of them. Thank you to our nurses who are also being recognized this week and our teachers in our district. And finally, a special thank you to Mrs. Elliott for providing our inspirational moment and getting my 3 girls out here, Peyton, Imani, and Summer. They were terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Agostini. Dr. Davis.
Ridgeview High School senior Malika Lightbourne is a step closer to being recognized as one of the most academic distinguished students in America. Lightbourne is a semifinalist in the annual U.S. Presidential Scholars Program. She is the only senior in Richland 2 and the surrounding public school districts in the Midlands to reach the semifinalist level. She will be attending the University of South Carolina Honors College in the fall. She was accepted to Columbia, Duke, Georgetown, George Mason, George Washington, New York University, and Rice University, among others. I didn't see Clemson listed. Please come and share your thoughts and ideas about diversity and inclusion in our district. The Office of Diversity and Multicultural Inclusion will host its remaining community conversations in June. The conversation on safety in our schools, originally scheduled for May 2nd, has been rescheduled to Monday, June 25th from 6 to 7:15 p.m. at R2I2. If your family will be in town June 25th, please save this date and join us for this important community conversation. I hope that many of you were able to attend the Sparkerberry Country Fair. We had several principals competing in the cow milking contest, but it was Langford's very own Cassina Jackson who was victorious. proceeds from the Sparkleberry Fair are awarded to Richland 2 high school seniors in scholarships and to teachers in the forms of mini grants. 25 seniors have been awarded $1,000 scholarships. And as we prepare to adjourn, again, I would also like to say something about Teacher Appreciation Week. If there was such a thing as wages of justice, teachers would be the highest paid profession in the world. Because teachers literally create every profession in the world. And without teachers, there are no doctors, no police, no engineers, no musicians, no attorneys, no carpenters, no accountants, no principals, and no superintendents. Teaching is the fundamental basis of every facet of society. Without teachers, there would be no society. So I would like to say thank you to all the wonderful teachers who have dedicated their lives and their careers to educating the children of this country, the children of this state, the children of this district. We love you and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Such kind words to our educators. You know, I was speaking recently with an individual who was from a different nationality and was talking about his country, and he said, you know, it's interesting. In our country, that's different than in the U.S., he says, for those who feed us, we pay well, the farmers. For those who defend us, we pay well, the military. And for those who teach us, we pay well, our teachers. And it's just something that I stop and think, those who feed us, teach us, and defend us, it seems a bit opposite from that structure. So I look forward to the legislature continue to look at teacher salaries as we continue to support that. Happy Mother's Day as well. And I've finished. I had the privilege of serving or being called for jury duty Monday, and you really see the size of our Richland 2 family because there were several teachers there, and you know you can stand in line to get out if you teach. Well, what's neat is our teachers stayed because because we are a country of the people, for the people, and by the people, and it was neat to see that. And I felt sorry for Clemson again because Judge Manning picked on quite a few in there, and we had one Clemson football player who was sitting in the jury box as well. So I'm left by thinking about those teachers, all of you here, those of you tonight who work so hard in so many different ways. That are we healthy soil? That was what was talked about this morning, and you all are healthy soil. You are germinating those of our future generations. So thank you so much for all you do. Okay, we'll move on to 16.1, which is our executive session number 2. We were able to complete our work in executive session 1, so now we'll move to 17, which is adjournment. If we have no objection, we'll now adjourn. Thank you so much.